everyone, this is Sarah, and today we will be discussing how to analyze data and express your opinion verbally. Specifically, we will be looking at the BEST test, speaking test, part 3. Part 3 is asking you to give a short presentation. To summarize, you will be given 2.5 minutes to read, review, and think of a response. Then you will hear a sound and have 2.5 minutes to then speak your response. Now, what information do you get on this test? First, you will be given directions, an assignment with 2 parts or 2 tasks. Then you will have a passage and a chart. Let's go ahead and look at an example. Here is an example of the directions you may receive. It will explain that you have a passage and chart and what they both talk about. And then the underlined section specifies that you can expect that there will be some sort of difference between the chart and the passage. And here's just another reminder that you have 2.5 minutes to share your presentation. Then your assignment. The first one is asking you to discuss the key difference between the passage and the chart, and the second one is your opinion. This is an example of a passage you might see, and here is an example of a chart you might see. Let's take a closer look at the assignment and what exactly it is you include when you do your presentation. So task 1 asks you to discuss the key differences between the passage and the chart, and the key here is difference. Now, when you speak, you need to 1, talk about the passage, 2, make sure you talk about the chart, and 3, find the connection or contradiction between the two. In this case, it's asking for a key difference. With that, you know that you are really looking for a contradiction. Now, how can you do this? Your first step is to just focus on the passage. What is the passage arguing? What is it saying? And you want this to be concise with the main point or main points only. You don't want to go sentence by sentence. It should be short and to the point. As far as how to start, on the screen are some sentence starters on how you can begin talking about the passage. For example, you can say the passage argues, or the passage states, suggests, says that. You can also say according to the article, as we can see from the essay, with reference to the essay, or you can also mention the author. Next, you want to connect and give a summary of the chart. So first, when you give a summary or when you talk about a chart, you will start off similar to talking about the passage, such as the chart illustrates, demonstrates, shows, depicts, summarizes, gives details or information about, or compares or contrasts. You can also say according to, based on, as we can see, or with reference to the chart, graph, or figure. On the table to the right, you will see some vocabulary that you can use to describe data. Trends is referring more to data that shows change over time. Amounts you use more for different amounts between different groups. And the last column shares if you want to compare between different amounts. This could be things like comparing scores or comparing money, for example. Now, how do you actually connect the passage to the chart? And specifically, how do you connect when you need to talk about a difference? Option 1 is to jump straight to the difference. So directly saying, how does the graph contradict or go against what the passage is saying? You want to start with something like, however, or in contrast, and mention how is it different than the passage. Another option is actually to first start with some sort of similarity, and then you would mention the difference. You can start with something like, the graph also shows, and then list your similarity, however, and then your difference. You can also say something like although or while, list your similarity, the graph shows, and then your difference. You can also say the chart similarly, and then the overlap or connection, and then say a key difference though is, and then whatever the main difference is that you noticed. Now moving on to task 2. This is asking you to explain whether you agree or disagree with the passage. This is when you say your own opinion, and you must include reasons why. This will be your evidence. And as stated earlier, personal experience is okay. You can also make some connection to the passage and graph. Now, first thing is you need to clearly say if you agree by saying I agree with, I also believe that, I can relate to the point that, or to clearly disagree with the passage. I disagree that, in my view, is not true, or I don't believe that blank is the case. Next, you need to give your reasons why you agree or disagree with the passage. You can give context, background information, reasoning. You could give more details about people or things related. You can share a personal experience of yourself or someone close to you, or you can reference the graph. So for example, you can mention contexts like being in a university setting or being in Taiwan. If you're talking about personal experience, you can say things like in my experience, or to me, or in the past I found. Or if you're sharing a story about someone else, you can say something like, one time my friend, and again, referencing the chart, so similar to the chart I find, or if you disagree with the chart and agree with the passage, although the graph, and then continue on with your reasoning. Now let's take a look at the example. Once you read through your directions in the assignment, you want to jump straight to reading your passage and your graph. I want to note the title is talking about studying and best results. I see the topic sentence, and this tells me that this article is talking about learning styles. Later on, I see it's talking about theory classes are better for people who prefer reading input, whereas workshops are better for hands-on learners. Here, again, I first want to look at my title. It's talking about scores by learning style. I also need to look at my key to make sure I understand what the graph is showing. Once I actually look at the data, I see, okay, this matches my passage. Verbal does better than hands-on. However, I see that actually for the workshops, they both score higher. I'm able to identify this as the key difference between the passage and the graph. I also might jot down some notes or keep mental notes to help me think of what I want to say when I am giving my short presentation. The last step before I speak is I need to form an opinion. Do I agree or disagree with the passage? In this case, maybe I disagree. And then I would think of, or could write down, reason 1, reason 2, to support why I disagree. Let's take a look at some example responses. Here is a great summary of the passage. It mentions study styles and shows the connection between theory classes and reading input preferences, and workshops and hands-on preferences. Here is a great example of option 1, where the person directly jumps into the difference between the passage and the graph. Lastly, here is their opinion. In the green, you can say that they clearly agree with the essay. Then they give reasons why. In the beginning, they discuss how they are a hands-on learner and need to feel things and do things rather than just listen. Then, however, they mention their friend, who is more of a verbal learner and actually does not need the hands-on element. Thus, this is why he agrees with the passage. Let's take a look at another example. They do a great job of summarizing, again, the passage is talking about those who prefer reading have a better advantage with theory classes, while hands-on learners do better with practice-based workshops. Next is their connection. Here is a great example of option 2. It starts off by stating the similarity between the passage and the graph, such that in theory-based lectures, verbal learners do better. Then it talks about the difference in the fact that practice-based workshops, both types of learners, perform the same. So here is an example of someone disagreeing with a passage. They clearly state they disagree. They use good words like because, or for example, or I used to, and give a personal example of how being more hands-on can help. As a quick review, your response needs to first say what the passage is arguing, then connect it to a chart and state the difference, or possibly similarity. Then you need to say your opinion if you agree or disagree with the passage, and then give reasons why. Thanks everyone for watching the video. Reminder to check out the English Writing Lab website for more opportunities such as Leap Right In or one-on-one consultations to help with your English writing and speaking. You can also follow our Instagram to see updated events and resources.